Says he showed up to the house, he knew he was late, he was a little bit worried that she was going to be mad at him. He tried the door was locked, and then he looked in the window and he saw this big red stain on the floor, and he thought that it was red wine. Ashton Kutcher, have you ever seen blood? Have you seen red wine? And also, did you know this girl to just be this kind of slob who would spill an enormous amount of red wine on the floor and seemingly make no attempt to clean it up? What are you talking about? Hello, how are you? Welcome to my channel. My name is Denise. I want to talk about Ashton Kutcher today, and I want to talk about his character and what we've seen all along, which would lead us to believe that my questions from the last video are correct.
My day job is as the chairman and the co-founder of Thorn. We build software to fight human trafficking and the sexual exploitation of children.
Is there anybody out there who's wondering with me? Ashton, were you trying to figure out the machinations of the world in which the criminals were caught so that your friend would not be caught? Were you helping your friend to find more victims through this organization? Now, I am so grateful for all of you in the comment section, because all of you pointed me to a channel called Growing Up Scientology, who's been covering this for a solid year. But the questions about Ashton Kutcher have been a major focus of his channel, and he's asking the same questions I was in in-depth videos. I wasn't even aware of his channel, even though I searched YouTube to make sure I wasn't, talking about something that everybody was talking about, like maybe I just hadn't found it. But I didn't find his videos until you guys suggested that I find them and go look for his channel. So informative. So some of you may have already watched all those videos and know all of this thing. For those of you who are not familiar with the very, very, very huge character flaws in Ashton Kutcher and why I believe that his participation in Thorn was as a cover for Diddy, then go ahead and watch this video. And then if you want to go and see longer videos and more in-depth videos, you can go over and look at Growing Up Scientology, because he is a fantastic resource for longer form content about this subject. But I think that for the purpose of this video, I just am going to compile all of the things I've seen that he's talked about and all of the things that I've been looking up as I study Ashton Kutcher's character. And is it possible that he could have done something so nefarious as to start a company that is supposed to target predators when he himself had many friendships with people who were known predators and convicted rapists? And it looks terrible. When you compile all the things about Ashton Kutcher, you wonder how he even thought he could sit in front of Congress and act as though he was part of the good guys going after the bad guys. I don't even know. I mean, he truly is delusional if he thought that he could sit there and talk like that. And at the time, like I said, I didn't know anything about Ashton Kutcher. I didn't know that there was any question marks about him. I didn't grow up watching that 70s show. I didn't grow up really caring about Ashton Kutcher as some kind of, sex symbol. I remember everybody thinking he was really hot when I was growing up. And I remember thinking, I guess he's okay. But I didn't follow him in any way. So when I saw him sit in front of Congress and talk about how he had helped this company to develop software that went after child predators, I was amazed. I thought he was a great guy. But I go back and I watch that footage now, and I think to myself, how can I be so naive? He's so clearly acting. He's so clearly being impassioned in a way that almost feels like a little over the top now. Once you watch that footage and the knowledge of who his good friends were, you sort of think you really are an actor, aren't you? This is a little over the top, the tears in your eyes and all this. Although, to be fair, and the part of the congressional hearing when he had tears in his eyes, he was talking about some very upsetting things, being very specific about abuse he had witnessed. And so in my mind, what kind of a person who had 2 kids of his own could talk about abuse like that and not get a little teary-eyed? I feel like what we saw was just somebody method acting, putting himself in the position of a person with morals and standards. How would that guy act, And I think he tried his best to act like that guy would act. But today's video is all about all the times when he wasn't acting like the upstanding guy. And there are numerous occasions in which it was just question mark, question mark, question mark. And what we're going to culminate today is his response to when he found his girlfriend murdered. And it is a shocking response. The lies he told the police afterwards are shocking. And before we get to that, I just do want to say nothing about this video is suggesting that he had anything to do with the murder. That has never been suggested. Nobody's ever thought that he had something to do with it. And if you've ever watched a video in which people put that as the clickbait title. Even if people float the idea like, did Ashton Kutcher kill his girlfriend? Like, that's stupid. Nobody's ever thought he did. But it was his response to finding the girlfriend that has everybody going, what an absolute dirtbag. Who would respond that way? And so that's what that's going to be our culminating point. But before we get there, let's talk about the person that he was leading all the way up. When Ashton Kutcher first got on that 70s show, as you all know, little Mila Kunis was 14 years old. And many of you guys know this story. I think this is a pretty well-known story now. The first time we saw them discuss the awkwardness and the weirdness of their relationship, of him preying on little 14-year-old Mila Kunis with Danny Masterson over there hissing in his ear to do it, was on Rosie O'Donnell's old talk show. And the two of them are on there and they're talking about how Mila had never kissed anyone before and that Ashton Kutcher was her first kiss in real life, and that she was 14 to his 19.
And they're like, okay, you guys are going to be making out in this scene. And I'm like thinking like, wait, this is like slightly illegal,
right? That's
right?
probably your first kiss ever, right?
It was my first kiss. Why don't you tell them what bet you made with Danny about our first kiss?
No, it wasn't the first kiss.
No,
This was like a second or third kiss.
It was the first. It was like the first week.
No, it was not the first week.
Whatever. Let me tell you what happened.
No, let me tell you what happened.
No. Okay, so I've never kissed a guy. So I was so. I mean, Ash was attractive, and I was a 14-year-old little girl, and I was extremely scared for my life.
Sure.
And he was very nice about it. He was like, "Oh, don't worry." So I was like, "Okay." Then Danny goes and goes, "Dude, I'll give you $10 if you French kiss her." What would you stick your tongue in my mouth or some?
What? No.
For $10.
You're making it sound like it was like really. Okay, Dan, we had a little side bet going.
Yeah.
Like,
Which was?
It wasn't very
as to whether or not, you're kissing on the show or boyfriend and girlfriend.
Yeah.
You would use tongue, right, Rosie? I mean, you would.
It depends what kind of an actor you are, I guess.
Absolutely, right?
Yeah.
So Danny bets me like $20 that I wouldn't do it, and of course I'm like, yeah, sure, what's the deal?
And then the cops showed up and you got arrested, pretty much.
They should have.
And there's videos of Danny Masterson literally saying, when Mila Kunis got on set, she was so hot. And she's like, I was only 14 back then. And he goes, yeah, that made you hotter.
Getting the job, and I didn't know. Yeah, and she was as hot as she was,
14.
14, she was even hotter. But I'm not allowed to say that.
What? It's disgusting. It's horrifying. And what's even crazier to me, and I guess times have just changed so much, but then on the Rosie O'Donnell show, these two would be talking about that, and, the audience is laughing, Rosie is laughing, the two of them are just goofing off like, it was so crazy how you did that. I mean, you did do that. No, I didn't do that. Yeah, you did. It's all just fun shenanigans on that fun set, that 70s show. And so I just feel like we're pulling back up all of this stuff. Even in light of the Diddy accusations, why is it that we're all acting like we've just finally come to our senses? That previously we were in a drunken stupor, but now we understand the words coming out of people's mouths. Now we understand the implications of a 19 to 20-year-old kissing a 14-year-old child. That's long since been known, and I'm sure most of you have heard that whole story. But the idea of preying on these young girls is nothing new to Ashton Kutcher. I mean, he's on camera being all excited about when Hilary Duff becomes 18. He jokingly says, he's introducing Hilary Duff in some video clip. I don't know what the point of it was. And he's talking about, she's got a record out. She's going to be in this movie called Cheaper by the Dozen. And she's also one of those girls that we can't wait till she turns 18. And he's like over there salivating about it. He's like, yeah, just like we can't wait for the Olsen twins to turn 18. And to be fair, there was a sick thing going on at that time with the Olsen twins. There was like 6 different internet countdowns to when the Olsen twins turned 18. So it was kind of like a cultural sickness where everyone was like, can't wait to get our grubby paws on those 18-year-olds. How guilty can a person be if everyone says it's fine and not everyone says it isn't? But his behavior was so strange and so weird that it goes beyond just being a little bit tone deaf to what you're actually saying. And I think anybody at any time would have looked at what he ended up doing with his girlfriend as enormously outrageous. So he'd been dating this girl, and there's different reports to how close they were. They were supposed to have a first date, but they had definitely been talking. They were definitely very attracted to each other. People say that he was completely head over heels for this girl. Just really, really excited to be dating her. To me, that seems a little strange because on their first date, he was extremely late to the date. They had planned to go to an Emmy after party. And apparently he was watching the Emmys at somebody's house, and then he was going to come and pick her up, and then they were going to go to this after party. And he called her around 8:30, and he said, hey, I'm running late. I'll be there soon. And she had just gotten out of the shower, and she was getting ready to go. And then he says he tried to call her 3 or 4 times after that, and she didn't pick up the phone. And he thought maybe she was just mad because he was going to be late. So he says that he showed up to the house, and this was his testimony to the police, okay? He says he showed up to the house. He knew he was late. He was a little bit worried that she was going to be mad at him. He tried the door. The door was locked. And then he looked in the window and he saw this big red stain on the floor. And he thought that it was red wine. Ashton Kutcher, have you ever seen blood? Have you seen red wine? And also, you know this girl to just be this kind of slob who would spill an enormous amount of red wine on the floor and seemingly make no attempt to clean it up? What are you talking about? But he says that he looked in the window and he saw that there was red wine on the floor, and he just kept knocking and she wasn't answering. So he thought, well, I guess she just went ahead and went to the party without me. And, so he gets in his car and he goes to the party. Except she was never there. And no, he never, in his explanation, did he ever say, I wondered what happened to her because I got to the party and she wasn't there. It was just like, well, I thought she was mad and I thought she went ahead to the party. Well, she's not there, man, because she's dead. But he never seemed to explain that part of the story. He said he assumed she was just mad and pissed off, and that's why he couldn't get in touch with her. On one hand, it's like, well, no wonder she was mad because you called her at 8:30 and said you're going to be a little late. And then the time that he actually showed up to the house was like 10:15. A little late. It's pretty late, man. When you look at the times of how long it took him to finally get around to her house on this first date that he was quote unquote so excited about, sort of seems like it was a plausible story for him to tell the police that, oh yeah, I just thought she was mad and that's why she didn't answer the door. What's not plausible is the fact that he says he saw blood from the window, because even that stupid story about, well, I thought the blood was a red wine stain on the floor. It's a lot of red wine to spill. He says, the police say that there's no way he could have seen any of the stains on the floor. There was blood all over the floor, but from any window that he looked into, he would not have seen it. And do you know why he knew that there was red stuff on the floor? Because he didn't look in the window, he walked in the house. And the LAPD have multiple officers who have told the story that Ashton admitted to them that he did go in the house. He went into the house, he saw the dead body, he freaked out, and instead of calling the police like any normal person would have done, he thought, what about my career? I can't be associated with a dead body. People might think I had something to do with it. So then he goes out to his car, and for 30 minutes he's sitting out there making phone calls to managers and friends, and one fatal call to Danny Masterson to be like, what should I do, man? I don't know what to do, man. Danny has the phone on speakerphone. And his girlfriend of 6 years was sitting with Danny. And she knew all the cast of that 70s show. And she knew all about the early years of that show and all the sickness that was going on. She said that when Ashton Kutcher got on the stand and tried to say that it had been a red wine stain that he had seen through the window, that it had been a bold-faced lie because she heard him on the phone planning with Danny what to do next. That he said he had gone in, that he had seen the body, that he knew there was a body in there and he didn't know what to do next. And the plan they came up with was, just go about your business, man. Just don't say anything. Somebody else will find her. She had a roommate, right? Just let the roommate find her, okay? You don't need to call the police. You don't need to get involved. And the only reason that Ashton Kutcher actually went to the police was because his fingerprints were all over the doorknob. He'd walked in on the scene of the crime. And so he knew that when they started going through the forensic evidence, it would be clear that he had been around. So he had to clear his name and go to the police. And that's the only reason. What kind of a sick person finds a dead girl that you say you really cared about and you just leave her body to be found by somebody else? And what kind of a person comes up with a stupid lie like, well, I thought it was red wine? Why would you think that your career would be over because you found a girl murdered? Of course, your name's going to be brought up because you're a famous person whose girlfriend was just murdered by the Hollywood Ripper. So yes, your name's going to come up, but nobody would have any reason to suspect he'd done anything because he didn't. And nobody has ever been able to plausibly say that he had something to do with it because they found the guy who did it and he's been convicted and now he's in prison. The real concern is that because Ashton didn't say something about what had happened sooner, that guy went on to kill again. And as Growing Up in Scientology said in a video that went viral, What if Ashton had done the right thing and reported the crime when it happened? Because it had just happened within the last 2 hours, because he'd been on the phone with the girl around 8 and then he came up by at 10 and she's dead. Had he done the right thing instead of just going back to the party and just, partying and just hoping that somebody else found her the next day, you're giving that suspect all kinds of time to get away and then to do it again. So it's just such a shocking lack of values on any conceivable level. Any human would have done something differently. Any marginally upright person would have called the police, but he couldn't be bothered. He couldn't be bothered. So then, of course, he's got this big bud in Danny Masterson. So when Danny's chickens come home to roost and we find out that he's the rapist that he was telegraphing to us that he was since day one, and he finds himself in court, he calls on Ashton to write him some referrals about his character. He writes this gushing letter. This guy's the best person that ever walked the earth. I mean, a real Ethel Kennedy type letter. And not only him, but Mila Kunis did too. The very guy who had paid this predator to French kiss her when she's 14 years old. Anyway, Mila Kunis seems like she's really confused about what happened to her when she was younger, but maybe she's coming to some conclusions that these people were preying on her since day one. But she writes letters as well to the judge. And they didn't think that the public was going to see these letters. But even so, why do you have to be so profuse? Why can't you just write the letter because your friend asked you, if you felt so called to do so? I think he didn't think Danny did it because I think that he and Danny were the same kind of sick. And he thought, well, I think he really thinks he's this good guy. And he thinks, well, I'm not a sicko, so Danny couldn't possibly be a sicko. Danny didn't do anything I wouldn't do. And see, that's the problem, Ashton. But he writes Danny these letters and then it all comes out. And then, of course, he's, beaten by the mob who's like, what are you talking about? Why are you defending that rapist? And he suddenly comes to the conclusion that he should apologize. But, to this day, I think if you asked him, should you have defended Danny? And he didn't think there was going to be any comeuppance for it. I think he'd say, yeah, why wouldn't I? Danny didn't do anything wrong. That girl who's saying he did something, she's just out to lunch. Because he and Danny were each other's ride or die. If you're going to call somebody when you find a dead body, the person you call before you would ever call the police, that is a person who you trust explicitly. The problem is, I think that Danny was over here blackmailing Ashton Kutcher all along, and I think that might have been why he wrote those letters to the judge. The fact that you would put him on speakerphone for your girlfriend to hear is kind of strange. Some people just always have their phone on speakerphone. But then at the same time, you have to ask yourself, if Danny was the sort of person who liked to have things over on other people, and he kind of does seem like that, is it possible that this was a pattern of behavior where he would kind of tell Ashton what to do and then Ashton would do it? It was sort of like a master-servant sort of relationship, which is what his girlfriend indicated in her messages when she told everybody, hey, you're just like your mentor. Is Danny the mentor? You're just like your mentor. I heard everything. I heard all your plans. Did you forget that I was there? He had you on speakerphone. I heard that you'd gone and seen the body. I heard that you knew she was dead. I heard that you left her and just hoped somebody else would find her. And that's how we know that Ashton lied to the police. So then after all of this is over, the final culminating story is that he comes to Danny's defense in the end and aligns himself with the values and the virtues of a rapist. And it doesn't matter how much he says, oh, I misunderstood, I misspoke, I shouldn't have, I didn't understand everything Danny had been up to. Yes, you did, because you guys were like this. So just like you're coming out being like, I had no idea Danny was up to so much stuff. I don't know. Yeah, you did. Yes, you did, because you're just like that, because you like it, because you are aligning yourself with people who are super stripped down when it comes to morality and are just walking around butt naked at parties, and you don't have any problem with that. You don't have any problem with trafficking, even though you want to sit there in front of Congress and say, this is terrible. We have to make it stop. We have to protect the people's pursuit to the right of happiness. A bunch of BS is what that is, Ashton Kutcher, and the chickens are coming home to roost.